Hey guys, thank you for listening to this episode of the Green Up Academy podcast. I'm excited to announce our first event that we're going to be doing while all of you guys are at Equip Expo through the Green Up Academy called the Green Up Gathering. It's going to be on October 16th, which is Wednesday night while you're at Equip Expo. It's going to be at 6:30 to 10:30 p.m. at Main Event in Louisville, Kentucky. If you've never been to Main Event, think of it like Dave & Buster's on steroids. It's going to be so much fun. We're going to have amazing barbecue and food. We're going to have a keynote speech from me. We're going to be talking about your business moving forward in 2025 and things you can expect through us at the Green Up Academy. We're also going to be having unlimited games, unlimited arcade time, bowling, and just getting to hang out with all the people who you've met through the Green Up Academy, through the lawn and landscape industry in one place in a small setting. So it's only $60, guys. It's an amazing value. We're going to have giveaways from Ballard Products, Yeti, and much, much more. So we want you to come, and we're going to be announcing and launching this on August 12th, which is Monday night at 5 p.m. It's going to go live. And like I said, these 40 spots, we feel very confident they're going to fill fast. So make sure you do that. We're going to announce it on our Instagram, our Facebook, and through an email, and of course through our website at thegreenupacademy.com. So you guys make sure you're there. We're really excited. I can't wait to see you and meet you guys in person, those who I've talked to online for many, many years and a lot of time. So looking forward to it. Make sure you come to our Green Up Gathering.
Welcome to the Green Up Academy podcast with Alex Kirby, where we focus on helping you level up your green industry business. Whether it's marketing, finance, employees, or strategy, we talk about everything on this show to help you apply it to your business and change your family and company's future for decades to come. Here's your host, Alex Kirby.
Shane, so let's start with this. Tell everybody a little bit about your story of how did we get to over $10 million company today. You're not even 40 yet. You've got this, we're in your beautiful facility in Spartanburg. How did we get here? Start with, what your genesis of why and how and what in the world, how did this happen?
So in high school, I was one of those guys, hated school. And so I went to Woodruff High School, and there you have what's called R.D. Anderson. That was shared between Woodruff, Dorman, and Burns, and it's a vocational school. Okay. And so you could go there at Woodruff in 11th and 12th grade year, but because I was already set up in college classes, I could not go in my 11th grade year. So I told my parents rolling into 12th grade year, I said, I don't care what it is, I'm going to pick something on that, and I'm going to R.D. Anderson, because you'd go to high school half a day, then you go to vocational school half a day. So I grew up on a cattle farm most of my childhood. And
How many acres is that?
So we owned about 60 acres, but we probably leased and farmed probably somewhere over 300 acres.
That's awesome.
Different, and we had cows spread out on different land that we leased and different things. So when my grandpa was alive, we was a little over 100 head of cattle. So
Sweet.
So I grew up on that. So I got to scrolling through the R.D. Anderson catalog, and I said, well, horticulture. Well, that falls under agriculture.
Right. Yeah.
I was like, and you got to go tour, of course, every end of the year, if you was up to be able to go there, they'd let you go up there and tour the year prior. And I saw they had tractors. There was some lawnmowers there. They had a greenhouse in there. And I was like, how hard could this be if I grew up around this stuff? So
not that way.
I went home and I told my parents, I said, I'm going to take horticulture. And they said, okay. They were very supportive of it. And I said, it'd get me out of school for half a day. So I did that. And really enjoyed it. It was around equipment. I love equipment to this day. I probably drive my wife nuts. If I see a piece of equipment I've never run, I want to get on it and run it. I'm still like a kid around it. And so we'd run equipment there, and I rolled through Christmas, and going into second semester in my 12th grade year, they said, my instructor, he said, his name was Mr. Bradley, great guy. He drove from North Carolina every day to teach this class. He was about probably in his early 60s then.
Wow.
And a great guy. And he said, hey, you can go start interning or co-oping. And so when he did that, I said, okay. My dad actually had a connection from his ag teacher in high school. His son run a plant nursery at the time in our area. Yep. So my dad reached out to him and he said, hey, you think your son Jeff would hire Shane to work there part-time? He said he's got an opportunity to go to high school in the morning, work in the afternoon. He said, yeah. And so we connected. So I started working in a plant nursery.
Cool.
And selling retail, basically just being the water boy, watering, organizing plants, moving them around. Obviously, you get to learn a lot of plant names there.
Absolutely.
And my mindset in the 12th grade was I had a desire to go in law enforcement.
Okay.
And couldn't decide if I wanted to go to the highway patrol or if I maybe want to do DNR. I wasn't real big into hunting growing up, but I just loved the fact of being outside.
Yeah.
So that part of it attracted me a good bit. And so I decided, and when it's going toward the end of the year, I ended up getting horticulture student of the year that year
That's
there.
cool.
And my instructor pulled me to the side. He said, "Hey, I know this really ain't your interest going into school, and I know you're trying to avoid school."
Yeah.
He said, "But why don't you go on to Spartanburg Tech?"
Yeah.
He said, "You get some credit hours rolling in the gate there, and you won't have to take as many courses as everybody else because you've done it here." So I talked about it. I went home, talked to my parents a little bit about it, and I said, "You know what?" I said, "I don't want to go to a 4-year school, but I might as well go get some kind of degree."
Mm-hmm.
And so I ended up going there. And I continued to work for Jeff for while I was in probably my first year of school.
Yeah.
And he ended up going out of business just because of some things. He actually had an install business as well. We built a lot of retaining walls there.
Right.
So after being there a little while, the summer after 12th grade, I just delivered mulch all day. That was my job there. Every day I'd go in and deliver mulch, and pretty fun.
Yeah.
I graduated when I was 17. Cool. So be 17 years old riding around in a truck all over the upstate delivering mulch. That was a cool
Listening
job.
to music, whatever.
You know, wasn't making a lot of money, but hey, it was fun.
Yeah.
And when I got into college, he started letting me work with his hardscape stuff, doing retaining walls. Really fell in love with that. And he kind of went out of business. His nursery side really drove him down. He did great on his install, but that retail side,
it's brutal.
He had a lot of inventory, and to keep up with that, it's a lot of money he's fronting, and not, and you got 2 times a year you're really making great sales around here. So he decided he was going to go, be done with it. He had an EMS background. He went back to EMS, and still talk to him to today, and thank him a lot for. I learned probably more lessons there than I ever learned in school starting off. And while I said, well, what am I going to do now? And before he ever even shut down, I was still working for him. My parents helped me get a skid steer.
Okay.
Because I never was interested in the maintenance side.
Right.
Even as a young kid, I didn't want to mow lawns.
Yeah.
And as I studied maintenance, the fact of just going every week to the same location just never interested me.
Sure.
And so they helped me get a skid steer. I started picking up little jobs. You go to school in the mornings after lunch. If you didn't have lab in the afternoon, I'd go do a grading job here or there.
Driveway.
Put in 10 plants. Whatever I could pick up.
Sure.
And I started thinking then, I was like, well, I think I could do this full time. This might be a possibility to be your own business owner. And as I got toward the end of graduating, I said, I want to go experience a big company. I said, if I'm going to do this, maybe I ought to go experience something first.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So there was a company right down the road from where I worked for Jeff called Poinsett Landscaping.
Okay.
I didn't know it at the time because I didn't know that much about them. I just knew they were a big company in the area.
Yeah.
I walked in there one day and said, hey, guys, are you hiring? They said, yes. I said, well, I'm graduating school here in a couple of weeks. I'll have an associate's degree in horticulture. I said, love to apply for something. So I ended up getting hired as a crew leader there on an install crew.
What was the pay back then on a crew leader?
It was about $12.
$12?
Yeah.
That's what, 15 years ago?
Yeah. So about 15 years ago. That would have been in 2006.
Okay.
So,
that ain't bad. That's not bad for 2006.
Yeah, so it was about $12, and wasn't bad. I enjoyed it. I did that for about 6 months, and I ended up getting promoted to a scheduler role. So we had about 120 employees there. We did everything from grading to concrete, anything to do. And we only worked for Poinsett Homes. We didn't do outside work.
Okay.
And so I ended up getting in a little bit of sales. So what would happen is a homeowner would get ready to buy a house. They go to the sales office and they say, hey, is there a possibility to upgrade my landscaping? They say, yeah. They said, we can have somebody come out from our landscape company and talk to you. So I'd go talk to them, and I never would tell them the price. I'd take it to the sales office, hand them the quote. They'd put a % markup on it, and they'd turn around and sell it, and the people would just roll it into their mortgage.
Sure.
So they would do it a lot of times.
Smart.
So I got into a little bit of that, and I kind of got interested in sales.
Yeah, what a great, first off, just to stop you, is you've gotten to learn so many things so early. Like you got a little taste of so much.
Yeah. So it was a great
Perfect.
experience. And so I kind of got the love of sales and dealing with customers and stuff. And I went to our general manager of the landscape company that answered directly to the owners. And I said, hey, I'm learning a lot about this landscape stuff. I ain't been out of school long, but we're like one of the biggest companies in the state. I said, why don't we go bid some stuff like commercial work?
Yeah.
I said, I'm still young at heart, but I'm like, these commercial guys would love us because we can grade it. We could pour the concrete for their pad, and we can walk their whole site to the last piece of sods laid. And he would always tell me, he said, well, we were created for Poinsett Homes, no other reason. We're not going to bid that work. So I kept pushing it. It never really went nowhere. And they made me upset one day and gave me a raise. I felt like I was doing somebody else's job there and my job. I knew what that guy made.
Yeah.
And I'm still a big believer today that you shouldn't share inside your company what you make, whether you're on the good end or bad end. It always equals bad.
Yeah.
So I already had an idea because of him talking what he made.
Yeah.
And it stuck in my mind. And so our guy that was the general manager, the owner of the company, lived up on Paris Mountain, which is a very ritzy part of Greenville.
Yeah.
And he said, he come back down, he got me late in the afternoon. He said, hey, let's sit down, close the door. He said, hey, man, I've been up and talked to the owner. I've been up there with him a couple of hours. And, I've been talking to him about you and getting you some more money. So I'm thinking this is going to be a great, this is about to go great for me. Well, he gives me $1. And that just like his build up and all, it just made it crash for me. I went home that night, applied for the highway patrol that very night.
Wow.
7 months later, I was in patrol school. Patrol school was about 6 months long. After I got out of patrol school, I then started working the road, and I kind of put my landscaping a little bit on the back burner because I was focused on a new career. Loved the job. If you'd asked me my first 5 years there, I would have told you I never would have left. I could have retired from there at 47 years old, drawn a state retirement check for the rest of my life. And a couple years in, I was like, got married, started having kids, and I was like, okay, the financial burden's getting to be a little bit more.
It's tough.
My wife went to school to be a teacher. I said, okay, what am I going to do? So I also was a firefighter. I volunteered and I worked part-time so I could pick up some stuff there. And one of the reasons that driven me to work there is because if I would have stayed my whole career at the state, every day I worked at the fire department, it also paid into my state retirement. So it did it did a twofold thing for me.
Yeah.
So if you know anything about government retirement systems, they work off your highest paid 3 years.
Right.
So it don't matter if that 3 years was your first 3 years or your last 3 years.
Right.
So it was building up what it made it look like I made in a year because I had extra money rolling in. Plus, every day I worked there was one less day I had to work on the patrol to hit my time. So I probably, if I would have done that my whole career, I might have could. I just had a buddy that retired out of the fire service, and he worked a lot of part-time on his day off. So he ended up retiring at like 40 years old.
Wow.
So you can kind of work that system. It's based on days, not technically years.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and I was like, well, that wasn't really paying much either. I mean, we're talking about getting a little over $100 a day for working a shift at that time.
Right.
And I said, there's got to be something, I still had my equipment.
Yep.
I still piddled. I'd have people call me random, say, hey, come grade this, come grade that.
Right.
You still do some plants.
Right.
And so I got back focused on it. And over probably about a 5-year period, I really focused on it at the patrol. And in 2017, it just started. We had 3 kids at the time. So we have twin boys and a daughter.
Yeah.
And my wife come to me. She said, I was on a traveling team. We traveled across the state working a lot of DUIs. That was our focus on. And so I mostly worked in upstate, but we'd go to Columbia, Charleston, Myrtle Beach.
Right.
And she said, you're traveling a lot on this stuff. She said, and when you're at home in the upstate, you'll work a 3rd shift, take you a little nap, and then you're out all day landscaping. Then you'll come back and take you another little nap and turn around and go back to work.
Right.
She said, something's got to change in her life, and you need to pick a career. That's basically the way she laid it down. And so in 2017, I did a lot of praying, and I talked to God, and I said, God, just show me a sign. I said, I love landscaping. I love what I'm doing, but I'm also got a guaranteed check here on the patrol. And I said, I don't know if I want to take that risk.
With 3 kids.
And so I'd say, show me a sign. And her cousin was in Florida State, and he was going to get his marketing degree. He started his own marketing company in Florida State. And he come to me on summer vacation one year. He said, hey, let me start helping you with your social media. He said, I'm really not going to charge you much because I'm just trying to get my business
Yeah.
off, and I'd like to just use it as experience.
Yeah.
And he did, and I started getting calls.
Right.
And I was like, well, maybe this is a possibility. So that was like one of the first signs. And then after that, the signs just kept coming. And I would say every time God would show me a sign, I'd say, God, just show me one more sign. And in December of 17, I was come out of church on a Sunday. I got in the car with her, and I said, hey, I can't explain it because God don't speak to us in the audible no more.
Right.
And I said, but it's like he knocked me over the head and said, hey, Shane, I've showed you all the signs I'm going to show you. How about you show me something now? You need to show me your faith.
Right.
And so I did. I went home and wrote up my resignation letter.
Wow.
And my 10-year anniversary on the date, which would have been January the 4th, 2018, that's the day I retired. I started on January the 4th of 2008. I retired, and it was a little bit, of course, bumpy, out of the start because
January.
Yeah, January.
First off, that's when I started January 17th.
And so you're in January, it's time slow, and you're trying to, and it was mostly residential focused at that time. And that's kind of what kicked it off.
How'd you do your first year? What was the revenue first year? You remember?
Our very first year was right at about 600,000.
It's awesome. It's a heck of a first year.
So yeah, we ended out 18 right a little over 600.
So, and you've scaled quick. I mean, we know, you're 600 to, you're only full time at this Cedar Ridge. You're at how many years now? Is that 9?
So if we're 18, we're 14. So we're a little over 6.5 years.
6.5. Well, I'm way off from my 6.5. And you're scaled to 90, 100 employees.
Yeah.
What was the, I wrote down here, what was the secret sauce there? Like we talked about the builders. Explain to people listening how you got into those relationships with these home builders and how it's been something that's changed your life, really.
So, God just kept providing opportunities, and we kept selling a lot of residential work, so that helped me. And when I left the patrol, I had about 10 guys that worked for me at that time.
Okay.
And I even had some troopers and firefighters that started working for me on their days off.
I was about to say,
get started.
You had the perfect type of network to get people to work because a lot of people in the landscape industry are firefighters half the time and landscapers. So you had all these guys that were like, hey, when I'm off shift,
that's right,
call me. So that's a great point.
And so I kept getting some good residential sales, and they kept picking up, and they kept getting better and better. Yeah. As my experience.
Mostly projects, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mostly projects.
Yeah. Okay. So mostly not much maintenance at the time. We did a little bit. We had a church we maintained that I was doing through, and I'll be honest, I probably had don't hold me to it, maybe 10 accounts that I was doing maintenance that was helping me along through my patrol days.
Good cash flow.
Hated every bit of it. I'm not gonna lie, and I still do to today. I hate maintenance, and I think there's people, and we have people in our company today that love it, and I give them the reins to drive. Right. It's just not my style.
Sure.
So, but I kept focusing on the install, and so we just kept kind of growing, and we had an opportunity. We did an entranceway over here in Spartanburg. Come in contact with a developer, ended up bidding on it. We ended up winning it. It was a townhome neighborhood by a big national builder, and that national builder, he come to me, and the developer said, hey, this national builder wants to talk to you, because at the time they were going to do irrigation through the whole neighborhood, which would have been a 2-wire system.
Right.
And they said, well, they want to run the same irrigation for HOA purposes off the same clock and everything that you're doing in the entrance. So we ended up having a meeting with this big builder in Greenville at their local office, and really went well. Next thing you know, we were finishing up the entrance, and we were rolling in there doing the townhomes. Wow. And of course, because of my experience from Poinsett, I understood what production is.
100%.
A lot of guys say negative things like, you've said about builders, and it's not for everybody.
Sure.
Let me lay that out.
It's
just
built,
like maintenance.
You got to be built for it.
Maintenance is not for me, but there's a lot of guys that are very successful in maintenance. So I'm not knocking maintenance. Sure. It's just not my style.
Sure.
And you got to be fast paced. You got to have crews that are wired to it. You got to be mentally wired to it. You got to take a little bit of a mental beating, because these guys they're going to get behind the 8 ball. They're going to call you in the last minute. So we started doing that townhome, and it started coming back to me, what I had done. So, we're talking almost 10 years since I'd been in it. Right. And it started coming back to me. And I'll be honest, I love the challenge of it.
Me too.
And so we started doing a great job, and Ryan approached us. They didn't even really know us up to that point. And they said, hey, man, we love what you're doing in this neighborhood. How about you ready to take on a different one? And I said, sure, we'll go ahead. And so that kind of just multiplied.
Right.
And then just getting out and networking with people. We joined the Greenville Home Builders Association. There's a gentleman there that is a go-getter that's running that.
Yeah.
And he is the definition of paying into an organization and giving back.
Right.
He still is that way today.
Cool.
We actually even have a meeting this afternoon from something that spiraled out of him, but he's very driven like that. And so I kind of just got to know him, and I'm a guy that will talk to anybody.
Yeah.
You know, one of those that my wife is an introvert sitting
Right.
over in the corner, but I'm talking to everybody. She's like, just shut up.
You talking off for the
Shut
both
up.
of
She's
us.
like, don't come over here and talk to me. And so I get to talking and going, and it starts building. And in 2012, I started doing a CrossFit.
Okay.
CrossFit kind of come on and got
Yep.
real popular. There was a place in Greenville I'd pass every day working on the patrol. And I said, hey, I want to see what this is. Well, it ended up some guys from Woodruff joined at the same
Cool.
time. And we ended up all traveling together, and you got to networking in there, not necessarily to be networking, just making friends.
Right.
There was a guy that was a bit higher up in another national builder company. He said, hey, ain't you doing the other builder? I said, yeah. He said, look, let me get you in front of some people. Let's talk about it.
Mm.
And so then we started working for them, and it spiraled. Where today is where I would tell guys out there, don't give up, because when I first left the patrol, I already knew I kind of had some interest in doing builders.
Yeah.
I'd go in their office. You know, I'm a guy, I never walk into an office empty-handed. I'm gonna bring you some crumble cookies, some nothing bundt cake, something. I'm walking in there. And it really surprises people today, especially since COVID.
Yeah.
They're blown away that you'd walk in an office.
Right.
But I couldn't get in the door. I mean, I'd be lucky to even get the receptionist to talk to me. But once I broke through with that first builder, now when I'd walk in, they'd always ask, and they did this before I had a builder, they said, who do you work for now?
Mm.
And of course, at that time, I could say, I didn't have nobody to say.
Right.
It was mostly residential and maybe a couple of developers, a little small stuff.
Right.
And then once you said, hey, I work for this guy that's your competitor. Oh, so you understand what we do here.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah. And so today we have builders that call us now and say, hey, you know, would you be interested in pricing some of our work for us?
Right. That's awesome. So we talked a little bit offline about how important faith has been to your business. And you made mention that something maybe over the last year or two has transformed. Like people who listen know that we did the same thing. I don't know. We had a speaker every month. We had breakfast for the guys. We had every Monday we had prayer requests and a little devotional. So nobody's going to be surprised that, you know, from my end, but I'd love to hear how the Lord has, you know, shifted. Cause that's a question a lot of people ask us. How do you have a Christian company when not everyone's a Christian?
That's right.
Like cause that's what we said. We're faith-based. You don't have to be a Christian, but you know, this is where we stand. And you know, you're going to have to be a participator or come. You don't have to enjoy it, but this is how we talk and this is what we do. What was the thing that kind of turned you over the last year or two to making it more? Was it something at church? Was it a small group? Was it a pastor friend? Or just
so I'm very active in my church, but
what church is it? Shout out.
Cedar Shoals Baptist Church.
Okay,
it's in Inner East, South Carolina, which is just below the Woodruff area.
Okay.
And so I've always been active in the church since I was about a teenager. My parents was not very active in church growing up, but I had an uncle that would swing by when I was a kid and pick me up and take me. Like my parents never stopped me from going to church.
Sure.
They were active as kids and then kind of got out of it and went through that phase. And my dad's passed away now, but my mom goes to church with me every Sunday now at the same church. And she's been active, and he was active for many years there toward the end, kind of based on me going constantly.
Isn't that awesome?
As a teenager, started with, you know, some buddies inviting me in high school. But anyway, you know, obviously I told the story of me trying to transition from the highway patrol to the going into landscaping full time. And I relied on God. I mean, I knew that's where I should be, but you kind of get your sinful nature in our flesh we battle with every day. Things started going good.
Right.
And to be honest, you got to looking in the mirror and you say, and you kind of quit relying on God every day.
Feeling
and you're like,
strong.
hey, this thing's flowing in there. I'm busy.
Yeah.
You know, started putting my priorities in the wrong places, started neglecting not only God, but my kids, my wife, you know, work, you know, especially when I didn't have any support staff. You're talking, I'm out here in the field, I'm selling, I'm trying to manage the job. Then I'm sitting at home at night till the middle of the night doing quotes, invoices, estimates. And so I started neglecting everything I shouldn't. And so that kind of just built up. And a little over a year ago, rolling into college football season, I am the only school that I acknowledge here is the Gamecocks.
Let's go, baby.
So in the state of South Carolina. And I know that tears people's nerves up
No.
being in horticulture because Clemson is our agriculture school. And I always joke, and this is really just a joke because obviously I've already said I hated school, but I always tell people, I said, well, that's why I never left Tech and went to Clemson to finish my 4-year degree. I couldn't bring myself to do it.
I'm a big Gamecock fan too.
So we've supported some of the Gamecock Club stuff over the years, and
that has to be where I've seen it.
yeah,
Do you
We
like
did
at
some
sporting events?
sponsorships
Yeah,
there,
that's where
yeah.
I saw it. That's where I
and
saw it.
so actually the guy that represented us in the Gamecock Club, me and him are still friends today.
Okay.
We didn't buy season tickets
Yeah.
this year, and we could get on that soapbox later about where
Sure.
sports is going
I
there.
can't stand it.
And but me and him have grown to be friends. Well, he is a big NASCAR fan. I am too.
Okay.
Growing up, my dad watched NASCAR. That was one of the few things because that was on a Sunday,
Mine
and
too.
my dad didn't. Even though we wasn't very active in church, he still respected
Yeah.
Sunday,
Right.
and he wouldn't work a lot on Sunday,
Right.
even though he was a workaholic.
Right.
And so we'd sit down and watch NASCAR, and me and this guy Wyatt at Gamecock Club, we hit it off, and he called me up last summer. He said, "Hey man, we're going before kickoff in Charlotte the night before. We're going to Joe Gibbs Racing." He said, "There's a chaplain there that graduated from Carolina. He wants us to come up there. They're going to feed us a meal. We're going to do a tour. He's letting us invite about 30 people
Cool.
up there." He said, "I want you to go with us." And so I drove up there. My wife hates racing. And so the whole ride up 85, she's like, "Why are we going up here?" And as hard, as big as a fan as I am in racing, and my dad was, and obviously I told you a little
Yeah.
bit off camera, he's a workaholic.
Yeah.
I've never been to a race car shop, and that's hard to believe because
Yeah.
they're literally an hour and a half up the road in
Sure.
Charlotte.
Yeah.
You know, every one you want to see.
Every single one.
Never had been there. So I'm really excited. I'm riding up the road, and we get there, and it's cool. Don't get me wrong, if you're any bit of a racing fan or not.
Yeah.
If you're just a business fan, go in there and just
Right.
watch how they operate their stuff, how clean it is, and how they're running things to a T. And so I got to talking to this chaplain, and it was funny because
What
he
was his
said,
name?
I don't remember at the time
Okay.
right now.
That's okay.
But I
talking
got to
him.
sitting down talking to him, and they brought us into the auditorium where they bring all their employees in, have their meetings of the full staff. And he tells us before we walk out in the shop, and they were in Darlington that weekend racing, so
Mhm.
all their people's out.
Right.
There's nobody there except he's the only employee there with us.
Right.
He says, "Hey, we're going to take a tour around. If you got some questions, you can ask me. But I'm going to be honest, I don't know a lot about this stuff. So I'll answer it if I can. If
Yeah.
not, I'll just tell you I can't."
Right.
Or he said, "I'll be funny and make something up for
Right.
you if that'll make you feel good." And so we got to walking around. I'm taking in how cool it is. Well, we sit down afterwards and eat the meal. Well, me and Marie sit down at this table. And I started talking to him. And he starts telling me, and I don't know if any of you know about Joe Gibbs. In general, Joe Gibbs is a very faith-based guy.
Yeah.
And I knew this before. He's written a book called The Game Plan for
Yeah.
Life that talks about all his ebbs and flows in life.
Right.
And his challenges in faith and how. So he got to talking to me, and basically he broke it down this way. Joe Gibbs is a guy, you walk in the door, he's going to tell you, "I'm a Christian. I'm a faith-based company. But if you're not a Christian, that's okay. If you got the qualities we're looking for in this job, we're going to hire you in a heartbeat.
Right.
But I just want you to know, walking in the door, we use biblical standards to
Mhm.
treat you as an employee." And he's done that, and he has 5 chaplains on staff that he pays for. And so I'm talking to him, and he's talking about how this has developed over many years now, where now the chaplains are not even involved. He says some nights there's 50 employees on a Tuesday night that will stay after hours on their own after 5 o'clock, meet up in the auditorium and hold their own devotion Bible study. And he said, sometimes we go in there and help them out if they ask us as the chaplain. But he said, most of the time they're doing all this on their own.
Yeah.
And he said, there's all kind of small groups that's broke down in that. And so long story short, when we rolled out of there and we're coming back down 85, because we didn't go to the game the next day because it was away game and kids and stuff like that. So we drove back that night. And I'm riding back, and I told Marie, I said, this place was cool. Don't get me wrong. It was cool to be there for a race fan. But the whole way back, all I could think about, I said, here's Joe Gibbs. He's won Super Bowl championships as a coach of the Washington Redskins.
Close to a billionaire.
He's won national. He's won in motorsports now and the biggest level, Xfinity and Cup Series championships. He's a championship guy.
Yeah.
And in that building, their job every day is to see how fast they can make those cars go. But he has 5 people on staff that can tell you nothing about how to make those cars go fast. But what they can tell you is how to love on people, share the gospel, and teach people where to find the answers in their life. And the whole way back, we talked about that. And I sat on it for about a week or two, and I was like, I said, this happened for a reason.
Yeah.
God lined all this up for a reason. And the reason we was there. And so I started reaching out to some friends of mine in the ministry and stuff, and ended up coming across a guy named Ronnie Marmel. He was a banker in college, got a great story about how he was actually drafted to go to the MLB. His brother is actually now the manager of the St. Louis Cardinals today.
Oliver Marmel. Yeah.
And so Ronnie lives right here in Taylor. He married one of my best friend's sisters. That's how my connection was with him. He was a banker for many years, left banking to go into ministry.
Wow.
And he now works for a place called Frontline Missions, based out of Taylor's, has missionaries all over the world.
Okay.
And so I reached out to my buddy first. I said, hey, you think you and Ronnie would be interested in talking to me about something like this? And so me and him sat down for actually a couple months and kind of just figured out how we wanted to deploy this into somewhere that we really haven't deployed it.
Right.
And so today, long story short, we have, he comes in and he is bilingual, so he does a devotion once a month. And we're trying to implement some of that stuff, and we want to grow it. I'd love to see it grow into the fact where we have a chaplain here full time.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like we tell our customers today, man, life's too short for us just to sit here and do transactions.
Yeah.
I mean, God didn't put us on this earth just to exchange money.
Right.
There's so much more. And I tell business owners today, since that's been really opened my eye and God's been working on me over the last year, I said, let's take the faith portion out of it for a second. There's guys in every company. I don't care if we're talking about landscaping or anything. We could talk about BMW up here, one of the biggest employers in South Carolina.
Right.
There's people walking in that facility every day that's struggling with something at home, and they're bringing it to work, whether you want them to or not.
Yeah.
So we can sit here as business owners and say, well, you know what? That ain't my problem. That's their personal problem.
Right.
But you know what? They're bringing it to work, and now it is your problem.
Right.
So take the faith out of it for a minute. You got to address it.
Right.
But, I mean, me and you both know what that answer is.
Yeah, faith is the answer.
There's a book written many, many years ago that still applies today, whether you believe it or not. It doesn't take long to open the Bible and say, man, that feels like it was written today.
Right.
And can speak to me today. And so I've loved sharing that. It's an experience that I've shared. You know, I appreciate the opportunity to share it today.
Please,
because I just, we're here for a reason.
Absolutely.
Work is part of it. God's clear.
Right.
You don't work, you don't eat.
Right.
But that ain't really why we're here.
No, right.
We're on a mission.
It's what happens in the midst of it. Are you familiar with Chaplains of America?
I'm not.
I'm going to connect you with a guy in the C12 group I was telling you about. There is a guy that they'll come in an hour or two a week and do the chaplain stuff. They don't have to be full time. So I'll connect you with that.
Very cool.
Very familiar with the builder I was telling you about. I'm friends with has 2 chaplains on staff, and they come certain times in the morning and certain times in the afternoon, and just walk in people's offices, checking on them and doing all that stuff. And they give you testimonies, they give you reports, they give you like their salvations, and it's really cool. The stuff I've heard from my friend about Chaplains of America. I'm gonna connect you with that guy. His name's Matthew Yates, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
I'll put you on LinkedIn with him. He messaged me the other day. Let me ask you this question. This is kind of a turn. What's been the biggest issue? Because this is where you can relate to the guys. The last 12 months, what has been the pain in the side of your business? Every business has great strengths, and then there's areas of weakness, just whether it be a weakness personally or a weakness because of the times.
That's right.
What's been the one for you guys?
So finding leadership is always a difficult one, especially as you grow and you grow as rapidly as we do. We have a production manager here today that started off as a laborer many years ago. So those stories are good. But even like you take him, I mean, he's still being educated and coached every day.
Right.
So it's just been putting the people in the right place. And what I've realized over the last year, sometimes it's my fault as the leader for putting them in a wrong place. there's usually a lot of times we have found over the last couple of years, there's places for those people to succeed. We just got them in the wrong place.
Have you heard that phrase? C12 talks about this. It talks about right person, wrong seat, and wrong person, right seat. Yeah. I love that phrase.
So it's been that. And then, of course, being in a heavy installation construction side, we use a lot of machinery. And operators are a dying breed.
Operators.
You know, and I tell any kid I run into in high school that's talking about leaving, I said, man, go get you a skill job.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to be able to name your own price here in a few years because that stuff is just a dying trade.
Cranes and skid steers and excavators and all that. I'm definitely concerned about that. And even truck driving. I mean, you know, there was a little scare for a while. Oh, Tesla's going to have, I don't think that's happening anytime in 4 or 5 decades.
No.
There's not a lot of guys truck driving. My friend just got his CDL. It's just a fun little story about that. And he couldn't get a job in it if he didn't have 2 years experience. I guess that's an insurance thing.
That's right.
But how does he get experience with a CDL if he can't get a job?
Yeah, if you can't start somewhere.
Where's the conundrum? Like, how do you fix that conundrum? So he had to go. I don't even know what he ended up doing, but he got one. But skilled jobs, skilled labor is something that I think is a huge concern because that's where the prices are just going to go skyrocket. I mean, why do you think houses are costing more? Because they cost more to pay the people building them. I mean, I know my friend is a builder at one of these home builders, and he has 3 years experience building. He's making $100,000.
That's right.
I mean, that's crazy.
Exactly.
He was a handyman before, like making $20 an hour. Yeah. And now he's making 85 to 100, you know, with benefits and all that stuff. So, okay, I'm with you on that 100%. We talked about private equity. This is something that people get concerned about. I play a sport called disc golf. Have you ever heard of disc golf?
Yeah.
I'm very big into that. And private equity bought 3 out of the 8 big companies, and it's kind of messed things up. They actually just did a price slash on their products yesterday because they can't sell them because no one wants to buy it from private equity. There's this weird stigma sometimes, or oh, you're buying us out to squeeze out jobs, or all that stuff. As you know, they've approached you. They approach anybody over $3-5 million. I mean, it's just they just for whatever reason, landscape companies, they love the recurring cash flow, right, with the maintenance. I just wanted you to share with everybody how your mission makes you pause on that, because I think it's important because when I sold my company, I was a little under $2 million, but for a lot of guys, that's a big company. They're like, what made you do this? What made you not do this? Or, you know, both sides. That's right. So mine was what made me, and I've shared that story many times. What makes you not want to at this time? Because I think it's interesting for guys who are thinking about getting out, for them to weigh the right reasons.
Is. So it's no doubt, if you do just a brief study of it, you know, and you're an owner of a company our size, they're going to want to keep you around. So you'll have a little bit of input, but your input's basically going to be sucked out of you over time. You know, they have their own agenda that, you know, they're, you know, number one, you got to think about some of your key personnel.
Right.
And, you know, you take some of your admin staff and some of your leadership, they're a risk that they're going to be gone because they have their own leadership at that point. So, you know, where's the balance of who stays, who goes? So you just think about it from a personal stance there, and, you know.
They've blood, sweat, and tears. That was the one for me.
Yeah.
They've done everything. I mean, you know this. I just met your leadership team. They've done everything to help you get there, and it feels like you're cutting the cord on them.
That's right.
It's a terrible feeling.
But the other big issue for me is obviously my story over the last year being really heavy about our faith and our mission to spread the gospel that's not going to be done in private equity. Let's be honest. I mean, you don't need to look around this world much to see how dark it's getting. And those guys are driven by money, and that's not going to be their focus. And unfortunately, and I'm not saying there ain't no faith-based guys in that. So I'm not putting them down personally.
The overarching thing.
But the overall people that sit at the table, you know, they're not going to know how many people's lives you know, how many people you spread the gospel to this way. They're going to know what the number is.
Balance sheet.
And we obviously got to focus on that as a business, you know. You know, but so that has really been the driving factor of me not to talk to them. I will talk to them. Me and you talked a little bit about this offline is I'll talk to them just because I like making friendships and talking to people. And then obviously a couple of them have called, and this gave me a chance to, they really sit there and listen to me of why I'm not going to do it.
Fascinated
and they're fascinated that I would, you know, in today's world, it fascinates you that you're like, hey, you're not willing to take a check because you're focused on spreading the gospel. I'm like, Yeah, I
That's
said,
awesome.
because this money ain't going with me.
Right.
One day I'm gonna have to answer for the choices I made, and if God's led me here today,
Yeah.
and I'm on a mission to help Him spread the gospel and let Him use this company as a vessel, then when I get up there and I have to start answering questions, I don't want to say, well, I sold it out for X number of dollars.
Wow. For what?
And that put a halt on it.
Wow.
And now for what?
Yeah.
And we just, I preach here to our guys. I say, we believe if we put God first, our employees second, and our customers third, the rest of it will solve itself.
Wow.
And so we live by that. And just like I said, we don't shove it down people's throats
Sure.
here. And when you talked a little bit off camera about it, is if you can if you got the skill set, we'll promote you.
Right.
Whether you're Christian or not.
Right.
But it still has an effect on your life.
Absolutely.
You can't be around it, and you can't deny it. So we just hope, we want people to look at this company. I don't want it to be Shane's company. I want it to be God's company.
Right.
And let Him decide what He does with it.
I love that. Salt and light, brother. It's just not something, my parents own a car repair business for 35 years. They just sold it 4 years ago to retire. My dad's body gave out. And my mom and dad talked about that all the time growing up. And we grew up in church about how, when a single mom comes in, is it really about making $120 off her? Or is it about getting her on the road so she can make it another day?
That's right.
Making it about people. I really love that. All right, last one, brother. This has been great. Well, let me ask you one small one, and don't take too long, and then we'll get you the finish here. You talked about sales, and I talk about marketing and sales a lot on the show. I'll stay away from the marketing because you don't need a ton of it with how much workflow you already have. But sales is something I think is probably top 3 struggles of business owners, because they're so busy either doing the work or trying to get work that they don't know how to close, and they don't know how to have a sales plan, strategy. Here's the revenue we want to do this quarter, like all those things. And you talked about with me offline that sales for you was about relationship building. Is that not right, what you said? Can you kind of go into that for just a minute or two, explain to guys listening how important sales is in terms of what it is to you and how you need to master that?
Well, I'm going to steal some words of Marty Grunder.
Let's do it.
He likes to use 3 words. And obviously I was talking a little bit about where my relationship is there with the ACE peer groups. But he says you need to prospect. He says he does 3 things every day.
Okay.
He prospects, he nurtures, and he closes. And to broaden out on that is there's some sales training we've took in the past and over the last years. They said it takes 8 times to talk to a customer on average to close a deal. So it's not about, and you can't get knocked down with it.
Right. Can't give up.
But you got to decide too, as an owner, what are you good at?
Right.
And that's sometimes owners are not good salespeople.
That's right.
Sometimes they're great operations people. Me, I've always leaned a little bit towards sales. And then you got to decide. It's hard to spend the expenditure on a separate person.
Right.
Because you're like, well, if they don't sell, I'm just paying them for nothing.
Right.
And they're not going to sell day one.
Right.
You can't roll into a place, even if they have experience, they don't have the relationships you have. So
Right.
you kind of got to spark them and kick them off. So you got to put a lot of focus on relationship builders. Like I talk about the Home Builders Association, because we're so heavy into home builders.
Right.
You got to be around these people.
Right.
You got to let them know. And we truly do believe this because of our faith, but we want to build friendships. We want to build partnerships.
Yeah.
There's been some home builders we have fired because they weren't partnerships to us. So you got to constantly be
right.
To steal his words, but you're prospecting, you're nurturing, and you're closing.
That's good.
And you got to run through those steps.
Yeah.
And you can't be so focused on the close. And,
Right.
And a lot of things will just start flowing to you.
Right. Right customer. Prospect.
That's
Right customer. Because that's something that often, you're so busy, you're so desiring work, you just take, but you have to prospect. And then you're right. Like if you're going to hire, this is where I made a mistake in my company. I share it publicly. I had 2 production managers who I let do sales, and I should never have done that. I was the main salesperson, but we were growing. So I was like, okay, I'm going to split some of the sales, some like 50% to
That's
them.
right.
And I realized production managers need to focus on production and salespeople need to focus on sales. I should have. And some conversation I had with somebody, I'm not sure, they said, give it 90 days, a quarter of don't expect them to make any sales. I'm like, 90 days? Yeah, you got to train them. You got to get them involved. You got to get them meeting people before they, obviously, hopefully they can break even for those 90 days. But it takes them 90 days to understand your company, your culture, your values. And so I wish I had done that. I wish I had hired a base plus type commission. Do you pay your guys straight up, or do you do the pay for performance with all these big jobs you do? That was a question I had.
So our guys can earn a commission off of sales. Obviously, they get paid a base salary. But our production style managers and our other help, they're basically just paid straight up.
I'm saying laborers, they only straight hourly.
They're straight hourly.
Okay. I didn't know if you had looked into the P for P type stuff.
We've looked in some of that stuff.
Yeah.
You got to be, as I told you, we just switched softwares back in April. So you got to have the right tracking to match that up in a timely manner,
right?
That you don't overload your support staff,
or they feel like they're getting screwed,
or they feel like, hey, where's because if you're going to go on board with that, you got to quickly start giving some rewards away, or 100%. They're like, hey, this is just blowing smoke,
right? I like that. All right, man, Shane, this has been awesome. Let me get the final thought from you. We asked this question to a lot of people. Is there one thing, if you had a room of 500 people, like who are listening typically to our show, plus the thousands of others see the clips, what would you say to the room full of people is the one thing you want them to know about what they should be doing, or an encouragement of what they already are doing? What's like the one piece of advice or one leaving thought you would have to a
I think the big thing is you learn, especially as a smaller guys, you got to let some stuff go. You can't, everything can't be your baby always. The business is, when you're a small guy starting it out, the business is your baby, but you got to start letting some things go, because you cannot do it all and grow your company. So you got to find people, and and unfortunately you're going to go through some people that don't work out so well. It's just the ebbs and flows of business. But don't let that scare you and turn around and say, well, sales, we just talked about it. Don't say, well, that sales guy wasn't no good. I ended up having to we had to part ways.
I'm done with sales.
I'm done with salespeople. You can't do that. Just let it go. And everybody always wants to ask, what's the size you want to get to and all that. I don't focus on that. No, I mean, you got plans, and you need to be prepared for where you're going. So don't take it as I'm just not a preparer or a planner. It's just, back to my fate.
Overanalyze.
Get up and work hard. Yeah. See where God leads you every day, and build some relationships.
Right.
And I promise, if you'll do that, it'll turn into business for you.
That's fantastic, brother. Thank you so much for your time today. Guys, this is the Green Up Academy podcast, where we talk about how to level up your green industry business. Shane Williams over here at Cedar Ridge knows exactly how to do that. Shane, where can people find you or email you if they have any questions? Is there an email they could, if there's a couple guys that have?
Yeah, if you want to email me personally, it's kind of long, but it's Shane at cedarridgelandscapingllc.com.
Perfect.
That's obviously our website too, cedarridgelandscapingllc.com. We're on Instagram, we're on LinkedIn, Facebook, and different things. So love to hit you up. We love educating people, and when we get a chance as well. So
we need to have an event here. You need to have a little rally for the state or something. It'd be sweet to have like a fall event or a winter event.
We'll line it up for us.
We're thinking about doing one. We're doing one. Have you been to Equip?
I have.
We do Equip, and we're having an event this year of 40 people.
Okay.
But in the February, before growing season starts, thinking about having a Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina type, maybe a 1-day conference where we haven't told anybody this, but we're talking about it. But I feel you and I are more aligned than you even have got to say, where my passion for the landscapers that I help and talk to is, let's worry about developing you as a leader and as a business owner, because you're probably good enough these areas, but you're just struggling in those because you're not good enough here.
Yeah.
So as a man, as a person, as a father, because at our church, I'm very passionate about fatherhood and parenthood. It's what me and my wife focus on with our small group. And that's something I'm leaning into more, because the guys I talk to, they're selling fine. They have a decent team, but they're not a good enough leader in terms of how to develop themselves. So then it struggles in the basis they have. So, we're talking about that. Maybe we can do something together on that. But thanks again, man. I really appreciate it. Guys, we'll see you next time.